of the Wave Shapers podcast, season numero dos. This season has been amazing. We've had some awesome guests on who have just been sharing from their heart, have been speaking wisdom, and today is no different because we have an amazing creative on today. I'm going to give a small little intro, but I got to say that my friendship with this person goes back to ninth grade, first day. The way that God works is very interesting. And I happened to sit at the lunch table with this individual all the way back in ninth grade. His name is Mario Busto and has been one of my best friends ever since those faithful days back in that small high school in Miami Lakes or Miami Gardens or whatever it is. Just to let you know a little bit about Mario. Mario is one of the OGs, as we call it. He's one of the ride or dies when it comes to not only friendship, but his belief and his dedication to his craft. Since way back in high school, he has been pursuing, interested, growing in filmmaking, directing, acting, everything that has to do with being in front and behind of the camera. And it's one of the things that I respect and love most about him because we've seen quite a few of our friends jump on and then jump off, but he has stayed true to the course. So, Mario, thank you so much for taking from your busy schedule, from your company, 1992, and to have a conversation here with us and the Wave Shapers. Thank you for being with us. Go ahead and say what's up to the people.
Thank you, bro, and hello to the Wave Shapers. Nah, man, OGs from the start. Um, Thank you for the intro. Very, very nice intro. Puffs you up a bit before you get started. I'm usually the one introing people, so I appreciate it when the tables are reversed.
Let's go. Let's go. Mario, thank you for being with us, man. And I mean I meant every single word that I said. So it's a true puff up here. It's a true worthy puff up. Bro, so let's get right into it. Let's talk a little bit about that actually, what I kind of just gave in that intro. We've seen a lot of people say that they wanted to make music, that they wanted to act, that they wanted to make fashion lines. And then we've seen that over time, many of them have kind of just dropped out of the race. Um, of course, there may be a part of that that should be like that. Maybe people that were never really called to it. Maybe people that just thought that it'd be cool or that it'd be easy to get going. And maybe they were in it for the wrong reasons. However, what about those people that I don't know if some of those are bots, bro. I don't know what that is,
All,
bro.
all I see is a comment from Catfish, and I'm like, it caught me off guard. Well, what's up? What's up,
I
Catfish?
low-key try to ignore that sometimes.
Yeah,
But anyway, all right, so the people that started and they did drop out,
yeah.
what do you think happens? And what does it really take for somebody to stick with their dream? When we started, we thought that things were gonna be easier, bro.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. Which, by the way, kudos. There's a skill for those who are watching to the live streaming game because as you're talking, you're just seeing things flying up on the side, and you're just like your eyes drifting down, and it's Catfish Germany, and you're just like, "Oh, what do I do? Do I respond to every single one?" But nah, the show must go on. About that, I've been kind of like the last week or so. That specific type of question has been on my mind and I haven't quite figured out how to articulate it, which is if you're building something, if you're doing something that you're building from the ground up, and you don't quite know how to do it, or it's a daunting task, that you got to do it, firstly, for yourself in some sense, and not for applause. If you're seeking applause and praise every step of the way, like you might get it at first. Everybody, like when you start off a venture, is going to be exciting. Hey, let's go, Rue, Mario. You started a podcast. Congrats. And then a month passes. Those guys clocked out, right? In some sense,
Right.
so they're not necessarily paying attention to what you're doing. And now that praise you were getting, it's gone. So now the high is worn off, and now it's time for the discipline and like the where you got to put in the reps, the work that like if you're a pro athlete, the work that nobody sees, right? Everyone celebrates the 40-point game, but nobody celebrates the 40 sessions in the gym, right?
Right.
So that
Right.
type of stuff. And I got to commend you because you're one of the few, I can probably count them in one hand, maybe on two or three fingers, to be honest with you, of people who had a dream, who articulated it, who communicated that dream, who like since high school you've been on the on music track, and and honestly you've always been a well-rounded person in terms of like public speaking and preaching and music and all of that, but always on it. And the persistence and the perseverance to continue that through the ups and downs, like I commend you for it, because it's definitely not easy. But it's just that it's continuing when the applause is not there and you're still just hacking away and it's just you know and that's pretty much, it's not too fancy, but it's just
Right.
continuing onward.
Yeah, it's not glamorous, right? Like it's not those 40 sessions in the gym that you were referring to, those are not glamorous and those are not that exciting and those are not that, electrifying, but uh, let's go a little bit deeper on that. What has kept you specifically on course now? And you can let people know, the Wave Shapers would love to know a little bit more about you because
Yeah.
I know also that your dream has, you've kind of always known the north and the direction where you wanted to head, but the actual dream in and of itself has taken on different kind of faces, or like it's gone molding and adapting itself, refining. The vision has been refined over time, both by what you desire because you're maturing and you're growing, and also because you're looking around at the actual landscape and being like, yeah, what I thought was going to work is not actually going to work. So let me refine the dream to this. But what has kept Mario Busto, like, why didn't you give up yet? Like, for real, why didn't you give up yet? Because we haven't seen all the manifestation of what we've been hoping and praying for. We're similar in that we've seen some breakthroughs, and that's freaking awesome, and we're thankful. But what has kept you specifically from giving up?
I think it's a layered question, and I might not hit everything perfectly on what it is. And like we log off, and I'll think of everything that of the reasons why I haven't given up. But giving up, just it hasn't been in my vocabulary. It hasn't been in my thought process. Not a single time, like in this entire journey, has that been an option for me. And at least it's something that I was like, should I give up? Should I stop this and go do something else? That's never been something that I've considered, like it, for whatever reason. And I'll go into it deeper now. For those who don't know me, who are tuning into this for the first time, um, I'm a film director. I have a production company, a video production company, called 1992 Films. You can go to 1992films.com if you wanted to see some of our work on there. And hit me up if obviously you need anything on IG or on the website there. But that has evolved over time, right? The dream starts, watching, a movie in theaters. We literally just did a review of 28 Years Later, the Danny Boyle film that's out right now. It's a zombie, not really zombie, but it's like a pandemic, which we're all very familiar with, those since we grew up through COVID.
Right.
um, and it's about that, and pretty much people turn into supercharged zombies. And anyways, this guy, he also directed Slumdog Millionaire and the Steve Jobs movie with Michael Fassbender. And I remember, funny enough, being like, I don't know, 12 or 13, 14 years old, and I watched, Slumdog Millionaire. And if you've ever been in a long movie and you got to take a leak in the middle of the movie, you got to run there, but you don't want to miss anything. And I remember going to the
Which,
bathroom. Now,
which, by the way, my sister just taught me a hack about that. I'll tell you
oh,
after. Remind me.
okay, please do. Is there an app that gives you like what you missed while you left for?
No, no, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the hack after. I'll tell you the
I
hack
thought
after.
about developing something like that. Anyways, so I remember just like looking in the mirror and being like, "Wow, this film is making me feel all sorts of emotions and transporting me into this place. Like I have completely forgotten what was going on outside of my life, outside of these 2.5 hours or 2 hours that I'm here." And I just remember being like, I want to write, I want to tell stories or create something that makes people feel that transports them, that makes them have an experience that they never had, they will never have. And but you're still getting that experience. It becomes yours as you watch that. And so I kind of experienced that moment of that being the most powerful medium of art to change the hearts of people. I think is visual media,
Wow.
in some sense, like visual and audio, but for me, it leans more towards the storytelling through visual mediums. But why I didn't quit? So that journey went on. It was doing projects in high school. It was acting in high school and college. It was you know racing to try to get a SAG card. It was working on whatever little indie sets through college. It was applying to film school and not getting in. It was working at my church for 3.5 years and launching a production company part time. And racking my head, realizing, man, this is really difficult. How do I get enough video clients to actually launch a production company so that I'm not doing what I'm doing now, which is working 9 to 5, or if you know those church hours, they're not 9 to 5. They switch depending on what events you got going on. And coming home and decompressing for like 30 minutes and then working another 2 or 3 hours to kind of strategize and figure out how to launch the company off the ground.
Right.
Um, and that was, coming from a place, I've never had a mentor in terms of this. I don't know anybody in my family, anybody who I know personally who is doing the things that I would like to do, that I'm aspiring to do. So there was never a moment where someone was like, "Hey, do X, Y, Z, and this will occur." Like, a lot of other difficult career paths are difficult, but they have a career path. You want to be a doctor, go to medical school, go do
Right.
your thing. But this was a little different. So I will say the reason I guess I did not quit, one of the biggest reasons for me is I felt it was a calling. I felt God put that, whatever these talents are, I know what they are. I don't know how He's going to use them ultimately, but I did feel a calling, and I know, and I'm a very persistent person. So for me, it was one of those things where I will sledgehammer a door down, and God will have to literally keep the door shut for me to not go. And if that's what He chooses to do, then at that point, then that door is shut for me, right? But
Right.
He's
Right.
always, at whatever peaks and valleys, He's always managed to open a door, whether it's the last minute or whether it's at a particular crossroads, that He has opened a door to allow the calling to continue and to keep going in a certain thing. And for me, my journey was not what I thought it was going to be, which was to go to California, act, and work my way up, act to write to direct to produce, those types of things. It was being in FIU, realizing around my sophomore year, like, wait a minute, like, I starting to kind of understand myself more, what I liked, and I was like, I'm at a place that has a pretty good business school. My dad has been in business for 30, 40 years. I had never thought of the film industry or media as something that I could run my own business. I always thought it as an industry that I needed someone else to give me a break rather than me to create the breaks, or
Wow.
to have an unorthodox thing. And so my journey through this has been unorthodox. I don't know anybody else who has kind of had who started a business first before that. Usually other people are kind of, there's different avenues to kind of go through the ranks, but mine has been through starting a production company part-time, then finding a way to take that full-time by creating a creative agency, and then pretty much putting the other marketing services on a need to know basis after the first year, and just focusing completely on production. And now we're 6 years in full to being a full service production company. And,
Nice.
you know, one day at a time, we're still learning. I'm still learning.
Nice, bro. You said a lot of good things that I feel like we can kind of go into and break out. Which the one that I want to specifically refer to is what you said about calling. But before we forget the calling, I'm gonna tell you the movie hack thing.
Okay,
Bro,
please,
so
please.
so I went to go watch Mission Impossible, the new one, which I have.
Long final 3 hours.
It was ridiculously long, and I have some comments about that. But I went with my little sister. I went with Jessie, and in the middle of the 3 hour movie, I was like, I can't hold it anymore. I need to go pee so bad. And she was like, I'm gonna call you on FaceTime right now. Answer. Bro, she called me on FaceTime. I turned the camera off. I went to the bathroom and she was holding it up to the screen. I could perfectly see and hear the whole time, like that I was in the bathroom. I thought that was like the most OP hack ever, bro. Cause it was literally like crystal clear. Like I could hear it clearly. I was like, what the heck? This is freaking amazing. Anyway, that's the hack for everybody.
All
Thank
right,
you, Jess.
that
Thank you,
works. So
Jesse. Jesse Marie.
FaceTime the screen. All right, cool. Got it.
FaceTime the screen, turn off your camera. Anyway, so I want to go back to what you said about calling. We're talking about why not to give up in the arts and entertainment industry, if we can kind of generalize it as a whole. There is no, like you said, specific career path. There is no, if you definitely do one, you're going to get to two. If you definitely do two, you're going to get to three. So there is uncertainty that is throughout, your whole. I want to pick this up off the ground. I want to make a name for myself. I want opportunities. And there's a lot of discouragement. I think we could say that. I think we can agree and put the disclaimer out there to say that if you're trying to get into this industry because of the glamour,
Oh yeah.
arts and entertainment and industry, you really need to rethink it, because it's one out of 100,000 that lives a glamorous experience, in the sense of, I started this and then I got signed, or I got, chosen for this film, or I got, like, no, like, the 999,000, they go through a drudgery and a freaking knocking and knocking and knocking and falling and knocking. But you said something so important. You said, I didn't give up because I've always felt that this was a calling. And that brings up such an important a point for all of us to consider and look at our own lives, which is, what are we called to do? Because the late great Miles Monroe says that we will be haunted by purpose.
Yeah.
And we will be, what he meant by haunted by purpose was, if we're doing a lot of things that are by definition great, but we intrinsically inside don't feel like those things are tied to what we were created to do, our purpose, we're
Yeah.
going to be haunted. Our purpose will frustrate all of our accomplishments and frustrate all of our outward success if we feel like we're not doing what we were created to do. So when you say that there was a calling there, to somebody out there who's wondering if they have a calling in the arts and entertainment industry, if they, how can you know that it's a calling? How can you feel that it's a calling? How could you know that it's not just, I woke up one day, ate a lot of pizza, had a dream? So what has been the process of you feeling that it was a calling, and then the process of that calling being confirmed, where you're like, yeah, it's not a straightforward path, but I am freaking sure that I need to do this because this is part of what's in my heart, what's in my soul, what's in my, talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I think one thing I would add to what I said was, on I guess on the same note of it being a calling, was, you gotta make a determination of, like, what are the things that you love to do, like what are the things that I'm passionate about. And for me, maybe a reason why it wasn't an option to quit, was because I would rather fail at something that I really want to do, that I'm aiming to do, than go and do something that I'm not passionate about, that I don't want to do. So for me, it's building this business. It's, doing production. It's doing podcasting. It's building things that I want to do. That changes over time. You become passionate about different things over time. You know Time is the thing that will tell you whether this is a calling or not. If you're not as passionate about it, because there are days you will not be passionate about it. And
Right.
I reuse the Mike Tyson quote over and over again. It's where he says, discipline is doing the things you hate to do like you love them. It's that. And that is anything you do. You love music, Rue. You love music. You've done it. I'm sure there were days in the studio, there were gigs you were doing, there were moments where you hated the thing you were about to have to do within one of the aspects that you consider a calling of yours, right? And
Right.
I think that's a misconception, that people think it's going to be like, a fairy tale the entire time. And I think even the people who do, the 1 in 100,000, have aspects of that glamorous life that they hate. But you're right, the majority of people, and I'm sure even when I was younger, like, being, you know, get winning an Oscar like at 23 was like, yeah, hell yeah, I would love that, and so,
Yeah. Mhm.
but ultimately those are shallow sort of desires, and those don't keep you wanting or sustain you on the long term. So I remember, actually, I spoke with a fellow friend of ours who's an actor, and and we were talking about it, and it was one of those things where, how much do you love acting? This guy's done it. Like, he's in that group of the 3 or 4 people that has had the same dream and continued his dream. His name is Isaac Rossi. He's also was just in the Dexter prequel show. He was acting in that. But we were talking
I
about it.
haven't heard about Isaac Rossi since you just said it right now in
Yeah,
years, bro.
yeah,
Wow.
brother. I just reconnected with him probably a couple months ago. We were in each other's podcasts, and I interviewed him. He interviewed me, and we did that. But we were talking about it, and it was one of those things where, like, acting is very difficult, and it's got to be one of those things where, like, do I love this enough that I'm okay being in an off Broadway play at the age of 55? Like, what are my expectations? And then I compare him to another friend of mine who I won't name, who I remember back in the day was like, I think I want to do this acting thing, and I was like, you sure you want to do it? Do you know what it requires? Like, do you know the auditions you got to go to, the rejections you got to face? Like, you think you're good looking, but then you go in this room and you find out there's 12 other Brad Pitts in there with you.
Right.
It's like, this is like a dog eat dog. Do you love it enough to like do that and face that and to work on your craft for not for like 5 years until it works out, but like for 5 decades, So because you can break out like whenever, but I'm saying like you also have to play that other alternative in your head too. Like, am I cool with doing all this? So,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
But let me go back to the calling thing. How do you know it's a calling? Us, as believers, I do think you got to be real and like if the doors continue opening and there are things that you're accomplishing that are not of your doing, because I'm a firm believer in that. Like we can only control so much, but all of my good opportunities have come through things that were outside of my control in some form or another. One aspect of it was, um, and I think like as if you see God blessing something and this is something that you're on, then perhaps it is. I don't think you can know for certainty at the outset of what your calling is. I don't know ultimately what this life is going to lead to. I just want to like a sponge be wrung out, that there's not a drop left of whatever he gave me talent wise, whatever, wherever those talents go. So,
Right. Right. Very interesting. I heard somebody say, well, I don't know, I'm sure it's been said more than once, but calling or purpose is where talent meets opportunity. It's where talent meets opportunity. And it may not be an absolutely perfect equation there, but I do think that it has a lot of truth and holds true in most situations. That if somebody wants to know if I am called to this certain thing, be it business, be it sports, be it, is there talent present? Because there needs to be a certain level of talent present. And I think that there needs to be a certain level of talent present more than anything because, like, if not, it's just gonna be the worst uphill battle ever. Like,
yeah,
like if you're not seeing yourself progress and getting better, like me, like with music, I'll give my own example. Like I was never bad at it. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was never like comparatively speaking, like even when I was a 3-year-old kid rapping, like I had like some, flow to it and this and that. And
yeah,
obviously I was nowhere where so there's a talent that's present. And then is there an opportunity to capitalize on that talent, to grow that, even if the opportunity is just to grow your talent, to get better, to spend time in the chamber getting better. And I think that when talent meets opportunity, you're on the road to discovering calling and discovering purpose.
yeah. Agreed.
And I think that, man, art, entertainment industry, it's definitely a calling. And let's kind of go down that road of, let's say that somebody, let's say Mario Busto is called to this. He feels in his heart, hey, this is something that I want to do. I'm passionate about it. I have a certain level of talent. I want to build it. I want to go down this road, like you said, no matter what kind of the cost is, whether I have to go this way, that way, whether I get my break in 3 years or 50 years, I want to do that. What, because you said we're believers on here. We believe that there's a creator of the universe that is empowering the world, that has called us, that is, what does God think about the arts and entertainment industry and our place in it? And what is the need for believers to get involved, not from a religious perspective, not from a, I have to make a movie about Jesus, but
Yeah,
like I want to make dope art
yeah.
because God is dope and he's a creator and he made us dope and we're creators. So what have been things that you have thought and or explored about the uh divine relationship or divine purpose behind us making this art?
Um, that's a great question. And a lot of things come to my mind where it comes to like, what does God have to say about the arts? Well, first and foremost, He's a creator. The word opens up with Him creating, and that is a creative practice. I think I'm somebody who's allergic to the idea of putting people in boxes. Although I do believe in being self-aware. If you are not talented at something, you got to be real with yourself, man. Like if you just have to. But I know there's a lot of people who say like some people are creative and others are not. I personally believe that everyone is creative in some way, that they have something in it. Does it necessarily mean it's going to be a life in the arts? No, because there's no role or position that is more that is like over one another. You can glorify and do whatever in whatever capacity that you're called to do. As long as you're doing it to the best of your ability and the way you can do it. And I don't know why, but this book came to mind. I haven't picked it up in years, but The Artist and Soul by Erwin McManus. He has a church in LA called Mosaic Church. And I haven't watched one of his sermons in a long time, but I remember that was one of the basic premises of that book was that what does God have to say about that? And then, funny enough, I listened to a sermon by Tim Keller recently about acting because I had never seen what does God have to say about acting? What does He have to say about this particular, which is particular to me? And what he was saying in the message was essentially the word became flesh, and so that word was acted out in some sense. And so it kind of wrapped in, like, what do actors do, like back in the day, like in the 1400s, 1500s, or 1600s, whatever. There was the word on paper, and then it was brought to life by actors who were playing it out in a Shakespeare play or whatever. I don't know what year Shakespeare was around, but I do love Shakespeare. And
Wow.
it kind of
Mhm.
opened up my mind a little bit to, like, oh wow, the word is becoming flesh in a sense. Like, if not, it would just exist within that paper, and
Right.
and so it kind of opened my mind up to it in a whole different way. Um, I don't know if that answers what you were saying, but it was just little kind of details that stuck out to me about what he has to say about creating and
No,
whatnot.
no, I think that's awesome. I had never heard that. I want you to, if you could find that Tim Keller message, I want to hear that.
I'll forward it to you.
The word becoming flesh, in essence, the word is being acted out, and that's how it becomes flesh. I think that's super interesting.
Yeah.
Um,
And who
Now,
who is, not to take it further, but who is described as the word became flesh? I mean, it's referring to Jesus. So I mean, what a higher, it's not much more of a higher association there that I can think of. So I was like, that's an honor to think about it in that way. I had never in my 32 years of life ever thought about it in that way.
yeah, because Jesus, in essence, was acting out the script of the Word of God. It even says in the Word, he says, I have not said, but what I've heard the Father saying, I have not done, but what I've seen the Father doing. So,
Mhm.
in essence, he was acting out what the Father's desires were, and he was living a life of an actor. Because, in that sense, it doesn't mean that he was not genuine because his desire was to do the will of the Father. So, him doing that was the most genuine and honest thing that he can do. You know what I mean? That very
Yeah.
interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting. Um, Okay, so where have you landed personally on, okay, I understand that there's a divine purpose behind this. I understand that we don't have to put people in a box and it doesn't have to
Yeah.
be this specific type of religious whatever. So where have you landed personally in the sense of I want to make a film one day just because it's freaking lit,
Yeah.
just because it's lit, and it being lit itself glorifies God,
Mhm.
or it needs to have some kind of deeper meaning that is an allegory, because we have things like Lord of the Rings, right, which
Yeah.
freaking amazing, the greatest Lord of the Rings fans, baby, let's go. But Lord of the Rings is an allegory of humankind and the salvation of man through
Mhm.
Christ and like all these different things. So where have you what have you been processing lately and thinking about, like the type of art that you want to make and the type of art that you think we need in this generation?
That's a question that, like, I always will be grappling with until I'm gone, pretty much till I die, which is what are the stories that I would like to tell. Talking about Lord of the Rings, I've always respected the fact that, and it's always appealed to me specifically that J.R.R. Tolkien, he had a lot of meaning in what he was doing and in the writings what he was doing, but it was under the surface. It wasn't so in your face necessarily, like a Narnia, where Aslan is clearly Jesus. Like,
Right.
whereas Tolkien's was more of a, I think, probably more. I don't want to insult C.S. Lewis because he's a legend, but in terms of creatively speaking, like, Tolkien kind of weaved in, I think, more skillfully with Lord of the Rings in some sense,
Like more poetic.
more poetically, yeah, in some way. And I love C.S. Lewis. It's not a knock. I love the Narnia series. I'm just like, if you know, what do you want, steak or fish? Like, pick which one. Which one do you prefer? Um,
Right.
uh, but going further with that, I've always kind of like gotten irked out by some of like faith-based films. I don't feel necessarily called to build like God's Not Dead, part 16. I don't feel that's not necessarily my cup of tea because it bothers me when things are done like corny or cornily. I'm going to create a new word there, cheesy. I find that like off-putting. I just think things need to be there. There's always been kind of like in my mind, like just because you're a Christian does not mean you cannot. You should be like, let's be honest, the Hollywood films like outdo a lot of faith-based films or most faith-based films in terms of the quality. And so to me,
Heck yeah.
in my thinking, I was just like, I want to do things at the highest level, not at a level that I consider like, yeah, it's a good message. I'm okay. We can get a good message from a movie that is kind of shoddy, but that's not what I would like to make. So I like various stories that don't necessarily have to be biblical, like that we are literally going to tell a biblical story here. I love a movie called The Place Beyond the Pines. Directed by Derek Cianfrance, has Ryan Gosling and Bradley Cooper and
Love that movie.
um, Eva Mendes, a bunch of people in there, and that movie's essentially about like the sins of the father passing down into to the sons, and how they pay for them in some sense. Like that's a whole. I love that movie. It's movie's amazing. And then you have Scorsese, who's a Catholic. He's a devout Catholic. From what I hear, he's a devout Catholic, and he tells the story of like, you know, essentially like when if you think about his movies, it's like the bad parts of man, like what happens when like those are allowed to kind of take over in some sense. And,
Right.
anything can be told. It's a human experience. So like I think as long as you're not like you should kind of have like your own personal compass of like what is too far, what is like you putting upside down crosses on everything, or you know what I mean. Like there's kind of an obvious barometer that you should have of what is not what you should not be doing.
Right.
And that's a constant, I guess, grappling because it's such a secular field, right? For example, I'm sure people will, if this blows up in the future, people will hate us for espousing our views, our beliefs, right? So, uh, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm with you. And I just wanted to throw in that there's another type of film too that is quite explicit, but yet poetic and completely unreligious, which is like the Book of Eli. Bro, that
Oh
movie's
yeah,
so freaking good, bro. Like, and it has the killing, it has the action, it has the cinematography, it has the good writing, it has Denzel. So
yeah.
you know what I mean? But it's obviously very explicitly a movie with a message that pushes people towards relationship with creator and the power of divine existence in creation. Anyway, with that said, Busto, I think it's so interesting because here's what I've been processing over quite
Before
a bit of time.
before you do that, Bianca, the movie was Place Beyond the Pines, the first one. Go ahead.
Place Beyond the Pines, yeah. Bro, here's what I've been processing over just a period of time. It's that the more we step into our identity, and I believe that our identity is only revealed and becomes clear over time as we have intimacy with our creator, right? So that's just
Yep.
so as somebody relates more with Christ, we become more secure of who we are. And I believe that people that relate more with their creator, they don't become more similar to each other. I believe that they become more individual because they get to operate in freedom.
Mhm.
Whereas other people that are not having this intimacy with their creator, they are not self secure because our source and our fountain is the creator. And so the outward pressures of people like judging them or whatever, they play more a role and kind of
Right.
dictate more what they're going to end up doing, aka bringing it to what we're talking about with films. If I'm not secure in my relationship with God, I'm going to tend to make my film more religious because
Yeah.
I'm going to be afraid of the backlash that's going to come from the
Mm.
church.
Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
get what I'm saying?
yeah,
But if I genuinely really know what the frick, I my relationship with God is, I can let that flow out of me. And it just so happens that what excites me in my heart meeting with the mind of God is going to be something unique and
yeah,
special and powerful, but it might not look like a lot of people want it to look.
yeah. No, I think that's great. And ultimately, like we got at a certain point, we got to care less about what people think, and just um, care more about what God thinks in some sense. Like, if you mess up, you mess up. You like this is a craft that we're doing things and we're not going to be perfect. And I think the audacity of someone to try to hold someone to a standard that they have not reached themselves is ridiculous. And so we got to kind of die. We got to die to praise and die to criticism in some sense. Like we can take it from respected people that you got to be careful who you take critiques from, and
Right.
who you respect enough. And that's it's not on a human level. You should always respect people, but in a sense of like, let's say your song is a banger, but you give it to someone who's just cannot, their capacity for the experimentation that you did on the guitar or sound effect you did is not there to what you want to do. You gotta at a certain point say, no, I don't care what freaking Marsha has to say about that.
Right. 100%. 100%. I'm with that 100%. Um,
I don't know any Marshas. I just tried to choose a name of somebody I don't know.
bro, Marsha is random, bro. I don't think we know a Marsha.
Yeah, that's why I
Uh,
said it, so nobody was like, who's Marsha?
yo, Busto, let me ask another question here. What would you? I can tie so many things back to music on this, but let's speak
Yeah.
about young creatives in general, including the music and film and fashion, etc. What would you say, um, if you? All right, let's do this. If you could speak to your 14 to 17-year-old self
Mm,
who was growing up in this day and age, so not like you going back to the year whatever when you were 14.
14. Oh, we'd be in business in 10 years at 14. Yeah, we'd be in business.
Yeah. So so like a 14-year-old today in 2025, but it's you speaking to
Mm,
a young and upcoming Busto who feels like they have a calling for film. They're dreaming the same things that you were dreaming at that age, but now in this day and age generation, freaking TikTok, social media, stuff that we didn't happen. What are just some things that would just flow from your heart in grace and motivation to a younger creative that's about to step out on this journey? Assuming,
mm.
let's assume that they really are called and that they have a calling in
We're
this.
gonna assume that, yeah, okay. Because
Yeah,
my first thing was gonna be like, oh, let's see if they're there, like 6 months or 3 months after they declare their intent.
right,
Um, what would I say to 14-year-old me? Um, in today's age, like with TikTok, with YouTube the way it is, because
right,
YouTube was popping off, around our age too,
right.
when we were around that age. But um, what would I say to them? You mean practical? Like how would I craft their career? I'm in the lab and I'm just gonna say I'm gonna make you a global sensation within 10 years. Like
No,
what would I
no.
do?
I mean, not no in the sense
Okay.
of that's not what I'm talking about. I just meant like, what does your heart want to tell to young Busto right now? Even more than specifically crafting the career, just like what warn them. What kind of
Oh, Warner.
mentality?
Okay, yeah.
What kind of mentality do they need to have? What kind of resilience do you want to tell young Busto or like what he can expect? You know?
Mm. I would say, man, it's a tough question, dude. That is a really tough question. I think there's a tendency, and there's a tendency in your teenage years to drift from God. Like you answer the big questions, right? But there's a lot of times, and you see it, and I see it either when I worked in ministry and when I was growing up. Was a lot of times kids are being dragged to church on their own in some sense. So I feel like you got to make your beliefs your own and not like be gripping on to mommy and daddy of what they're telling you to
Right.
like. You got to establish that for yourself and have peace with what you decide there. In terms of the resilience side of things, um, we're assuming they're called, so they will have to push through and not be uh, through the ups and downs, find a way. And just because it's not looking the way they thought it would, that they do continue to pursue. I would say another thing is increase like your own self belief in some sense. Like just because you don't like to do something, you should dive deeper into that, even if just to gain more of a knowledge of it or of an experience of it. And then also the moment you start to notice, because usually these dreams start with people around you that you're working with or doing things with. The moment you have to be discerning. the moment you see someone is not doing as much as you or not caring as much as you, then that is someone who not you don't I don't believe in axing people out. I don't believe in cutting off relationships, but in terms of developing your craft, you got to go your own way. You got to find those people who are pushing as hard as you are,
Right.
or you will stay in that zone, in some sense. So and what I mean by that is you came up with people doing music, right? How many of those people are still doing music? You know, and this is not even an experience I have, but it's just something more along the lines of like keep looking for those voices, especially in today's day and age where you have YouTube and you can look up people to aspire to or mentors who can tell you things like that. For sure, we had social media, but we didn't have that where we
Yep.
could hear from somebody who we can hear their story, hear their journey. Podcasts will tell you what to do, what not to do. Just diving deep into all that on a practical level. Start creating content like crazy. Live streaming. That is pretty much what I would do at 14. I mean, shoot, that's what I would do now. But yeah,
Right. That's awesome.
we're doing it literally right now. So
Yeah, we're literally doing it right now. No, that's really good, man. That's really good. The discerning, the being real with the people that are around me right now. Are do they want this as bad as I want it? Are they willing to pay the price and
yeah,
to be okay with understanding that, hey, maybe in another time we'll work together, kind of like you said, like
yeah.
not burning bridges but separating yourself from people that don't want this as bad as I want it. That is freaking huge.
And still do things with them. Still do things with them. When you want to collab, but branch out. Branch out more. In that sense, um, and if on a lifestyle perspective, if you know something is not something that you're going to be doing 10 years from now, then try to cut those habits earlier, and save yourself the headaches down the road. So but you mentioned something, bro. It's funny enough, the one of the most um what's the word, like deep conversations I saw was actually Snoop Dogg and ASAP Rocky. They were having a sit down conversation. I forgot what Snoop said to ASAP Rocky, but he essentially was saying how, because ASAP was like blowing up at that point, and he was like really ascending, and he came up in a group, I think. I believe he had like a group around him and stuff like that, but it wasn't necessarily about his group. It was more about you you got to keep on moving, and sometimes when you're moving and you have a bunch of people around you, you have to carry them too. But at a certain point, you can't wait for them to catch up to you. You got to just keep going. Otherwise you're stopping every single step of the way as you're
Right.
continuing that.
Yeah, that's
So
big. That's big. Man, if I could speak to a young Rue or a young Busto growing up in this day and age, it would be more than a conversation because this would be God, you're right. But no, when I see you reading the comments, then I have to look down and read the freaking comments, man.
elevator friends. Oh, I like that. Elevator friends. That is good.
That bring you higher. Um, bro, so this would be more, I don't know if this would be able to, I'd be able to communicate this in a conversation. This is more like a discipleship thing, but man, one of the most powerful things that I've learned, and it's taken me years to freaking learn it, is that, bro, the means, like, the end doesn't justify the means.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of creatives, and not just creatives in the sense of arts and entertainment, but like you said, creatives in their business, people that are chasing a dream. I feel like a lot of them hate a lot of the stuff that they're doing and even hate some of the lifestyle that they're living, and believing that it's all going to be justified
Useless,
if
man.
I have this one outcome, this
Yeah.
one fame, this one money, this one whatever it is, this one platform of recognition. And something that's taken me a long time and a lot of going through valleys and mountains and whatever to learn is that we are supposed to be living in the present moment and
Mhm.
enjoying our lives right now. That the joy is in the journey.
Oh yeah.
So if I hate sitting down and making music, the actual making of it, the figuring out the sounds, the figuring out Logic Pro, the whatever, whatever. If I hate that, then I really need to consider doing something else.
Mm,
And if I don't hate it, then I should embrace loving it enough that even if the song doesn't end up turning out like I thought it would, or
yeah,
maybe it turns out like I thought it would, but it never gets heard the way that I thought it would, that
yeah.
it would be enough for me because I enjoyed the freaking process.
Mm, that
Enjoy the freaking process. Like bro, like Busto, your life is not going to be complete when 1992
of
films does
course.
this, and Rue, my life is not going to be complete when this certain amount of people hear my album. It's like, no, life is right now, bro. Like, this is my life. I love having conversations with my friends, with Busto, with this, with that, and that doesn't mean, like we said before, that there's not going to be a level of responsibility,
Mhm,
certain things that we have to do, and I don't feel like doing it specifically today, but I decided that this is wise for me to do it. And I decided that this is my calling. So I'm going to embrace it and I'm going to freaking love it.
yeah.
That's what I would tell a young Rue and a young Busto. What does that make you think? And what does that make you want to say?
No, I think that is like exactly. Now, do I think 14-year-old version would listen to it? Different story. But
Right.
that would be like where you see the person bash their head in. But for the, it's spot on, man. When you, let's think about it. Like our actual, let's say, you go multi-platinum or whatever. The natural human reaction is like, all right, what's next? Like, what is the next thing? So it's always about the journey, and you miss the grind that it took to get you there. And I think that's key what you said. Like, if there's ever a moment where you don't like what you're doing, either A, maybe you're doing the wrong thing, or B, you need to adjust your perspective on how, this aspect of what you're doing to enjoy it in some sense or some aspect about it. But I think that's massive. For me, in terms of just not being obsessed with the end result, just be obsessed with every day. I literally have that written up there.
What do you have written up there?
Learn, literally focus on progress, not perfection. Learn to fall in love with the process. That is pretty much uh,
Yes.
literally.
Yes. The joy is in the journey, bro. Because if we postpone our lives till some circumstance that we freaking pulled out of our butt that we think needs to happen for us to be happy, we'll miss out on our whole freaking lives. And
Mhm,
and not only that, but even if that thing by some miraculous chance does happen, we won't even be in the mindset to enjoy it because this is a mindset. This is a way of being, a way of thinking to understand that every day is a gift
mhm.
and that it's a joy to be able to freaking be alive, to have food, to have a house over our heads, to have a warm bed. And then on top of that, I get to pursue a dream that I like. It's hard as hell, but let's freaking do it. Like, we're blessed,
That's
bro.
part of it. That's part of it. Is that it's a blessing in and of itself to pursue such a luxury um, calling in some sense, right? Like,
Right.
you know, the sacrifices that our families had to make to allow us to be able to do that. Like for us to have been able to be in our young teens and not be like, okay, I gotta do this or I have to work this because I gotta support so and so. Like everything is a gift in a sense. Like Lily just put it in there. Every day is a gift. It's true. It
Yes.
literally is true. Everything is a gift. Our trials, the things that we struggle in this, like it is a I forgot what it is, but like I used to pray. Somebody put it, or I thought about it. I don't remember where I got it from, but essentially, like we are levels up from where we started. And when we were down there, we used to pray for the opportunities to have the hardships that we have now, the problems that we have to solve now. Like back then, we wouldn't have even been in a possibility to be in a room to have to solve those types of problems.
Right.
So literally, even the hardships that we encounter are things that you know oftentimes we prayed for because those come along with it in some way because we're continuing to try to just get better at what we do.
Yes. Yes, bro. Busto, this has been an awesome conversation, bro. Thank you so much. I have one last question for you here, but I also want to give a shout out to Lily, Bianca, Anjali, the most supportive team right
For
now
real.
on this
For
live
real.
stream. Love you guys, man. Thank you
Thank
guys
you.
so much. And
Thank you.
and you want to support even further, share the Wave Shapers podcast YouTube channel. I dare you to text the link to the last 5 people in your text messages. Love you guys. We're growing this community. Busto, I want you to leave us with one last little response here, and I just want you to speak from your heart, whatever comes to your heart and to your spirit, which is I want you to imagine that there's a few people out there that are listening to this now or listening to this later, and they're hearing what we're saying, and they're saying, like, yeah, that all sounds beautiful, but Busto, they just feel like crap. They feel like they're not worth it. Maybe they're dealing with some kind of addiction. Maybe their life is freaking horrible and they're in a hole that they feel like they're never going to get out of. And they're just thinking about calling it quits on their dream. Some people may be thinking about calling it quits on their freaking life, bro. Like for real, for real. So if somebody that's just really down and out, just what would you say to them, man? What would you say to that person? Whatever comes to your heart.
That is a deep question. Um, First and foremost, I mean, it's a layered question. There's not one thing that we can say in that. If you're thinking of taking your life, I'm not a very good. I don't think I'm a very good teacher in some sense. I'm very much like I'll tell you what I think and I'll give you my perspective, but I'm not like a very good patient teacher in some sense. Um, if you're thinking of taking your life, I think it's an identity issue in some sense. And I didn't do any prep on that. I may change my mind on that statement, but I think it is you have your identity, your value, your sense of worth in the wrong place.
Yes.
And ultimately, think about those people that you would be affecting if you made the ultimate. I mean, let's call it a selfish decision to do something like that. And I was reading actually, because I know Wave Shapers is on multiple levels, but ultimately aiming to glorify God through gifts of different artistic and creative means. And I prayed over the questions and I read, various, I read a couple chapters, but one of them that came to mind, and this is where my mind is going, this is where my heart is going, so this is where I'm going to go, was when Jesus is baptized by John the Baptist. Uh, Immediately, what happens after he comes out of the water? He goes in Matthew. He's tempted for 40 days and 40 nights,
Hmm.
and the three temptations are of the following, because as in the creative field, one of the difficulties is having enough bread to eat, is having enough sustenance, financial security to continue the dream. That is probably maybe number one in terms of people who are pursuing a dream in this, have to figure out that, right? and um and essentially Satan offers Jesus bread, right? He's just finished 40 days of fasting. He says, offer you bread. He says, man shall not live by bread alone. Okay, that's one. Okay, and then if we want to expound that, where Jesus tells us that each day has enough trouble on its own, let's take that into account, and that, you
Yeah.
know, all that. And Shakespeare has a line about, is there providence even in the fall of a sparrow? In other words, that God is in control of everything. Two, um, the second one is to throw himself down onto rocks, which to me brought to mind when I read it last night, was somebody taking, in some sense, somebody taking their life and testing God, or taking their life into their own hands.
Hmm.
And I thought about that, and I thought about my pastor had a great message this weekend about when Jesus resurrects, and you got the disciples in the boat, and they're fishing all night and they haven't caught a fish, and they're fishing all night. And he says, "You caught anything? You got a fish for me to eat?" And they haven't recognized that it's him yet. And then he tells them, "Cast the net to the other side of the boat." And when they do that, it's filled with fish. Not because they were just trying for 24 straight hours or 12 straight hours of fishing, but because God said, "This is the moment that you're going to catch all this fish because I say so." In
Right.
some sense. And that spoke to me specifically because there's so many times where we're just trying to wrestle control of every aspect of our lives. And until God says go, you're not going at the end of the day. All the fasting, all the stuff you want to do, every single, even religious activity you want to do to say, I'm gonna go, God, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna, make that movie, I'm gonna make that show. Unless he opens the door, you ain't leaving the house.
Yep.
So that's
Yep.
two. And then the third one, when he's tempted, it is to he's essentially he's being promised to be given everything of the earth, essentially all the power and fame one can have in some sense. And that's when he tells him to go. So, and those three things just spoke specifically to I think the creative temptations, which is financial security, taking our life into our own hands. I think that applies to everybody. I think all these three things apply to everybody. And the third is a lot of is the vain sense that a lot of us started this journey with, which is to be, I want to be the most famous person in the world. You know,
Right.
I want to be, all those three things. And so honestly, what I would tell to someone who is going through these things and feels down in the dumps is, you got to get outside of yourself and hear from God. And from for us, we're speaking from a biased perspective. We have answered this question for ourselves, and it's up to you to be intellectually honest with yourself and to figure out, am I listening to myself? Am I being too led? And we're not perfect. We do this. We mess up. We're led by our emotions and all that. So it's a constant thing. But you got to answer those big questions for yourself. And God says, if you seek Him, you will find Him. So I think He'll
Yes.
be faithful in answering you wherever you are and whatever will make sense to you. But Mario doesn't have the answer for you. Rue does not have the answer for you. That is a one-on-one thing for yourself that you got to go do the work and figure out. So yeah.
Yes, definitely, brother. Thank you so much. Getting outside of yourself, being honest with yourself, understanding that our value lies in different things than what we may think that they're lying in right now. There is hope. Lily says you matter. Talk to someone. Don't apply a permanent solution to a temporary season of pain. I agree with that 100%.
Good.
Busto, thank you so much, bro, for this awesome conversation. Busto, let people know where they can connect with you one more time if they want to know more about 1992 films or about you or connect with you in any sense.
Follow me on Instagram, Mario Busto. I don't know if my name's gonna be on there, but it's exactly as it's spelled on there. I'm on Rue Story at the moment, so you could easily find it there. And yeah, that's all. Or 1992films.com if you want to get a hold of me through my company in some sense. But I prefer people following me and then and taking the conversation from there, and then I'll show you portfolio, whatever you need. So, anyways,
Amazing. Busto, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your creativity. Thank you for fighting for your dream. 1992 films. We will see epic, epic, epic things to come. I really believe that, and our collaborations as well. Thank you to the Wave Shapers community. There is hope. Believe in yourself. Fight another day because we're just getting started. We love you, Wave Shapers. We'll talk
hold
to you
on.
soon.
I gotta do the hold on. We gotta do
Let's
like we gotta
go.
do like a perfectly synced like. All right, ready? Three, two. Oh no, that was bad. That was bad. Whatever. Okay.
Love you guys, man. Busto, love you, bro. Thank you.
All right, brother. Love you too.
Bye.
Peace.